Hey, my name is Mazarine Trays, and I'm the author of The Wild One's Guide to Fundraising and the upcoming book, Healing from the Nonprofit Sector. Since COVID started, I've really been working on my own inner healing, and that's a lot of what this book comes out of. Today, as you can tell from the title of the video, we're going to be talking about trauma bonding, what it is, and can you be trauma bonded to your nonprofit job or potentially individuals within your job. As a caveat, I'm not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. And I have looked at the nonprofit sector for a very long time. If you're curious about delving deeper into this, definitely get my book when it comes out, Healing from the Nonprofit Sector. And today we'll be talking mainly about nonprofit sector jobs, but this can also apply to lots of other different kinds of jobs too. So, are you trauma bonded to your nonprofit job? Has this happened to you? Did your boss or colleague say, "We're like family here"? That's happened to me. Here's why that's a problem. This phrase might help you become trauma bonded to your nonprofit job. What is trauma bonding? We're going to find out. Desiree Adaway quote here. "Sometimes the universe removes people from your life for your protection. Don't run after them. Who or what needs to be released for your survival?" So what is trauma bonding? It's when a person involved in a toxic or abusive relationship forms a strong bond with and often idealizes their abuser. Yikes. When people say, "I love my job, I work all the time, and they ask me to work on the weekends and nights, and I don't even mind," this can be a sign of trauma bonding. The emotional connection with an abuser is an unconscious way of coping with trauma or abuse. If you ever feel like you're walking on eggshells with your boss and colleagues, hoping to get approval, that can be a sign of trauma bonding. What makes a trauma bond more likely if you work at a nonprofit or in movement spaces? Tada Hozumi says, "Trauma bonds are essentially emotional entanglements that form when we go through peak experiences together that resonate with pieces of unprocessed trauma in our unconscious and cause us to surpass our emotional thresholds." Whew. That's a lot. So you might be emotionally entangled. Trauma bonds almost always produce codependent dynamics where the objects of admiration become redeeming saviors that can do no wrong. Until they do. When enacted in a community, trauma bonds tend to create cult-like collective dynamics. In order to control the person, an abuser might use any of these tactics. Financial abuse. Money or ability to work are controlled by the perpetrator. Can you see how it would so easily happen at work? This job can fire you at any time for no reason, and it can literally feel like your very survival is dependent on you keeping this job. This is an aspect of nonprofit trauma bonding made worse by the low wages in the nonprofit sector. Denial, minimization, and blaming. Your feelings and perceptions get dismissed or made light of or denied by the perpetrator. You might be told you deserve the abuse or that it didn't happen. Maybe a colleague or supervisor says, "He's not that bad," or "You're just too sensitive," or "All jobs are like this." Isolation. Cutting the employee off from friends and family. Have you ever been encouraged to have no boundaries between work and home life and work all the time? For example, I once had a boss who was like, "Why was I the only one here at 7 o'clock last night?" And I'm like, "I like to go out to dinner. I like to be away from work after 5. You're not paying me to work more than that." So that's just an example. Intimidation, threats, and coercion. Doing and saying things that instill fear like, "We can replace you," or "If you're not willing to work Saturdays or answer your email after hours, maybe you don't really want to work here." And again, that's exploitation, to have to check your email on the weekend. Even if you say, "I don't mind," even if you say, "It's no big deal," you're not getting paid for that time. Decision making. Important decisions made solely by the perpetrator without input from or consideration of you. And so here's where we start to get really close look at the dynamics of nonprofits, how they're just the same as businesses and capitalism, where there's a feudalist mentality. One person makes all the decisions and you just have to be okay with it. So your boss makes important decisions about your work without your input. This can be another aspect of trauma bonding. And emotional abuse. humiliation, name-calling, mind games, criticizing, gaslighting. This can happen with bosses or colleagues, often leading to PTSD symptoms. Hopefully this has never happened to you, but it has happened to lots of folks. So how do you know that you're trauma bonding? Nonprofit jobs can make you feel like you have an emotional and financial trauma bond. You may not feel emotionally or financially safe to leave. You might have keen awareness of everything the perpetrator wants and expects in order to mitigate abuse. At work, this can get really fuzzy. Your boss or colleagues can put pressures on you that are really not your job. Someone in a trauma bond might also show signs of PTSD and suspicion of others who point out the trauma they're experiencing. So common symptoms and signs of nonprofit trauma bonding include gratitude for small acts of kindness by the perpetrator. Are you really supposed to be overjoyed for that pizza party instead of getting the raise you deserve? Accepting and agreeing with the perpetrator's point of view. Do people at your work require you to be on the same page as they are about political or unrelated things to your job? Acting in ways that are contrary to their own values to appease the perpetrator. Have you ever been an emotional dumping ground for someone at work just to try to ingratiate yourself with them? I have. Denying the abuse or rationalizing it, i.e. believing that they deserve the abuse as a result of something they did. It's my fault. I should have answered that email at 9 p.m. We could have kept that grant. I have to be working till 10 p.m. It's just the nature of the job. Everybody does this. Hyper-focused on the perpetrator's wants and needs. Let's face it, an at-will work environment encourages us to try to keep our jobs by any means necessary. That includes learning the love language of your boss or colleagues to keep on their good side. Difficulty leaving the abusive relationship and fear of retaliation from the perpetrator. If you do leave, of course it's hard to leave a job when you don't have another one lined up, and it's hard when you want to get another job in the sector, so you keep quiet about the abusive ex-boss or colleagues. The cycle just continues. They could give you a bad reference, right? Even if you manage to get an interview in this environment. Losing your sense of worth. This is a big one. Who would you be without this job or title? Do you feel like you don't have value without it? Well, there was a time before this job and there will be a time after it, but that's hard to see in the moment. Experiencing a strong emotional bond with a perpetrator. Oh, I could never leave. We're a work family, or this work is too important. Even though they treat me badly, don't give me raises or vacation, and I can barely afford to live, I love my clients, patients, students, donors. We're there for each other. We'll get through this. Bonus, perceiving anyone who encourages you to leave the abusive relationship as an enemy. If you've ever tried to encourage a friend to leave a bad work environment or a bad relationship, this may have happened to you. So what does the cycle of trauma bonding look like? Maybe when you first got this job, you thought, wow, now my troubles are over. This can happen with all jobs, right? Not just nonprofit jobs. So do any of these sound familiar? Part 1, honeymoon and love bombing. Most dysfunctional relationships start with the abuser listening intently to the victim's wants and needs, showing them all the affection they lack. Maybe when you started your job, you had a honeymoon period. People were asking you to do simple, small things, and you got these perks to keep you there. However, as time went on, things started to change. Unrealistic expectations. Part 2. After a while, the colleague or boss will start complaining or abusing. Sometimes you'll do a great job and it'll only focus on the negative. Sometimes they'll scream at you and demand absolute perfection and loyalty. The abuser hones in on the victim's vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Typically, the abuser will start complimenting the victim on their intellect or personality to make them feel seen and special. Maybe they just expect incredibly unrealistic results from you, and you can't control their expectations even if you try. You start to worry that you can't predict their moods and you start walking on eggshells. Part 3, nothing is enough. Once the compliments and validation have won over the victim, the abuser will begin to devalue the victim, and the episodes of abuse will begin. The victim then works harder and harder to please the abuser, often to the point of utter physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. Does this sound like a toxic job or what? The victim becomes consumed with getting back the amazing or thoughtful person they met by any means necessary. What if that amazing part of the job is never coming back? What if your boss is never going to be thoughtful or caring or help you succeed in moving up in your career? Does any of this nonprofit trauma bonding sound familiar? Check out the book, The Battle Between Somebodies and Nobodies by Judith Ann Wambach. Very useful in recognizing the different kinds of power plays at work. How do you break the cycle of trauma bonding? Well, you can get coaching. Get a better job. and figure out what questions to ask in the interview to make sure that it's going to be a better job. Where can you find a better job? There are tons of jobs out there, and I'm going to put a link in the chat for a list of places to find jobs. Get therapy. I cannot recommend this enough. I wish I'd gotten therapy years ago. You can check out Therapy Den or Psychology Today. Get out. You don't have to take this. I mean, you could, but do you want to? No. Stretch your imagination. What does a career after fundraising look like for you, if that's what you're doing? Maybe you want to be a consultant instead of just going back to another nonprofit job. Let's break free. And if you liked this, definitely check out my book, Healing from the Nonprofit Sector, out soon.